I had spent years pursuing power, patiently, deliberately, sometimes ruthlessly, because I understood something many people prefer not to admit. Power matters. It determines which voices are heard, which laws are written, which lives improve, and which opportunities exist for those who come afterward. Yet power also reveals a person. And once the crown rested upon my head, years of observation, patience, restraint, and preparation suddenly acquired something they had lacked before: authority. At last, I could do more than understand the empire. I could help shape its future. The coronation had ended, the celebrations faded, the music grew quiet, and then the real work began. Very quickly, I discovered that ruling an empire resembled conducting an orchestra during a storm. Every section demanded attention simultaneously. Generals wanted armies, bishops wanted influence, merchants wanted stability, provincial governors wanted money, foreign rulers wanted advantage, and everyone believed their concerns should come first. Fortunately, by then, I understood people rather well, and empires, I would soon discover, are governed through people far more than laws. Justinian trusted me completely. That trust gave me extraordinary freedom. I received ambassadors personally, issued directives, participated in legal reforms, maintained correspondence across the empire. Foreign envoys often arrived expecting to meet an ornamental empress and departed wondering why the emperor's wife knew so much about frontier defenses, grain shipments, taxation, diplomacy, and provincial unrest. Very few women in history possessed authority like mine. I never forgot that, nor did I waste it. Influence is easier to gain than to keep. I had no intention of allowing my position to depend solely upon the affection of one man, even if that man happened to be the emperor. So I built my own network. My sister Camito married the General Citas, one of the empire's most respected military commanders. My niece Sophia would later marry Justin II himself and eventually become empress after me. Other relatives entered influential households, military circles, and positions close to power. None of this happened by accident. Alliances require cultivation, just as gardens do. Left unattended, both quickly become overgrown with problems. My closest ally remained Antonina, wife of Belisarius. Together, we navigated the endless rivalries of court life, exchanging information, warnings, observations, and occasionally saving one another considerable trouble. Among my allies stood some of the most remarkable people of the age. Belisarius was already emerging as a military genius, calm, disciplined, astonishingly capable. He was reconquering vast territories once lost to Rome. Through his wife Antonina, Belisarius remained closely connected to my circle. Then there was Tribonian, perhaps the most brilliant legal mind of his generation. While armies expanded the empire's borders, Tribonian helped reshape its foundations. He worked beside Justinian on the great legal reforms that would later become the Corpus Juris Civilis, preserving and organizing centuries of Roman law. Many considered him arrogant. Most geniuses are accused of that eventually. I found him useful, and more importantly, effective. And then there was John the Cappadocian, intelligent, tireless, dangerous. As Praetorian prefect, he helped finance the vast projects Justinian and I envisioned for the empire. Few men understood the machinery of government more thoroughly than John. He also possessed a flaw common among exceptionally capable people. He believed himself indispensable. Eventually, he began gathering influence that rivaled the authority of the throne itself. That was unacceptable. John had never hidden his contempt for me particularly well. He viewed me as an actress who had wandered too far into the affairs of rulers. I viewed him as a man who had forgotten where power ultimately resided. I had no intention of allowing a second center of power to emerge within the empire. So Antonina and I decided to remove him. The opportunity arrived through one of his trusted associates. Carefully guided conversations led John toward a meeting where he believed he could safely discuss the future of the empire and his own place within it. He arrived confident, relaxed, certain of his own cleverness. That confidence betrayed him. Encouraged by sympathetic listeners, John spoke freely about power, influence, and possibilities that should never have interested a loyal servant of the throne. Hidden nearby were men loyal to Justinian. They heard everything. By the time John realized he had been maneuvered into revealing himself, his fate had already been decided. Thus John lost his office, his influence, and the future he had spent years constructing. Some later called the affair ruthless. They were correct. But empires are not preserved through sentiment. John understood power very well. His only mistake was believing he was the only one who did. Meanwhile, my influence continued growing. Not because Justinian permitted it, but because I earned it. People often describe me as the emperor's wife. In truth, I governed beside him, sometimes with him, occasionally through him, and sometimes entirely on my own. Then came the Nika Riots. Even now I can still hear them shouting, "Nika! Victory!" The rebellion rolled through Constantinople like thunder. The blues and greens united, buildings burned, prisoners escaped, senators abandoned loyalty, a rival emperor was proclaimed. The city that had raised me now seemed prepared to destroy itself. Inside the palace, panic spread rapidly. Some ministers urged flight, ships waited in the harbor, even Justinian hesitated. And suddenly, I understood something with perfect clarity. If we abandoned Constantinople, we would never truly recover it. So I stood and spoke. I told them that every human being dies eventually, but rulers cannot abandon destiny merely because fear arrives at the gates. Then I said, "Royal purple is the noblest shroud." The room fell silent. Justinian remained, and history changed direction. Belisarius and Narses moved swiftly. While the rebels celebrated inside the hippodrome, convinced they had already won, imperial troops entered from multiple directions. The exits were sealed. What followed was brutal, but brief. By nightfall, the rebellion that had nearly destroyed the empire no longer existed. Constantinople had been saved. Everyone understood how close we had come to losing the throne. Strangely enough, that crisis served me well. Very few people questioned my place beside Justinian afterward. When fear entered the palace, I had chosen to stay. After that, my authority no longer came from a crown. It came from memory. The riots left Constantinople scarred. Entire districts lay in ruins. Even Hagia Sophia, the spiritual heart of the empire, had fallen to the flames. Justinian and I rebuilt it grander than before. It stood as a monument not only to faith, but to ambition. A reminder that great civilizations are measured not by the disasters they endure, but by what they build afterward. The empire had survived, and intended to endure. But the greatest test of my life was still ahead. Years later, the plague arrived. Nothing I witnessed before or after compared to it. Death moved through Constantinople without regard for rank, wealth, influence, or faith. Entire families disappeared, markets emptied, churches filled. Funeral processions became part of daily life. Then Justinian fell ill. Suddenly, the future of the empire seemed uncertain, and for the first time since becoming empress, I allowed myself to imagine losing him, only briefly. Fear is useful as a warning, but it becomes dangerous when allowed to govern. So while Justinian fought for his life, I governed in his place. I met officials from dawn until nightfall, directed policy, maintained order, prevented rival factions from exploiting uncertainty, organized relief efforts, protected food supplies, and managed communications throughout the empire. Privately, I prayed. Publicly, I ruled. Those months exhausted me more than any political battle ever had, but they also revealed something important. There is something uniquely unsettling about a threat that cannot be negotiated with, reasoned with, bribed, or defeated in battle. Yet I found that purpose leaves surprisingly little room for despair. When Justinian finally recovered, Constantinople remained standing through my administration. Many people never forgot that. Neither did I. The years that followed became some of the most productive of my life. I never forgot the women trapped inside circumstances they had never chosen. Girls sold into prostitution, widows abandoned by families, women with no legal protection. I knew that world personally, which meant I had little patience for people who discussed such women as though they were abstract problems instead of human beings. So I acted. Laws protecting women became stronger. Rights regarding inheritance and divorce expanded. Penalties for trafficking increased. I also established a refuge called metanoia for women seeking to leave prostitution and begin again. Imperial agents purchased women who had been sold into brothels and brought them there. Others arrived on their own after hearing whispers of a place where a different life might still be possible. Most could scarcely believe that freedom was being offered without a hidden price attached. Many people saw only what those women had been. I was more interested in what they might become. Perhaps because I had spent much of my own life asking the same question. Faith also remained central to my life. During my years in Alexandria, I embraced the Miaphysite faith, which taught that Christ possessed one united nature, both divine and human together. The official church followed a different doctrine, known as Chalcedonian Christianity, which taught that Christ possessed two distinct natures, one divine and one human. The disagreement may sound subtle, yet it divided the Christian world. Bishops argued over it, cities argued over it, entire provinces identified themselves through it. Religious disputes quickly became political ones. A bishop could lose his office, a community could lose its voice. Families and cities found themselves choosing sides. Many Miaphysite clergy were removed from their positions, exiled, or forced into hiding. So I offered protection whenever I could. Clergy found refuge under my authority. Communities found advocates at court. More than once, I stood between vulnerable people and powerful institutions. This did not always make me popular, but faith that bends conveniently with circumstance is not faith at all. I believed that God would judge me more carefully than my critics ever could. And so the years unfolded. Victories were celebrated, defeats endured. New challenges always arrived to replace old ones. Such is the nature of power. Yet by then I understood something I had spent much of my life seeking. A meaningful life is measured less by what we acquire than by what remains because we existed. And all around me, I could see those traces. In the laws, in the churches, in the women whose choices had expanded, in the empire itself. When illness finally came for me, I found myself looking back across the years with a sense of wonder. As a child, I believed I was alone, yet perhaps I never was. Perhaps even then, when I was hungry, frightened, and uncertain of tomorrow, God already knew what I would become. He was preparing me long before I understood His purpose. Looking back, I realized that every chapter of my life had been necessary, even the ones I would never have chosen. Great destinies are not built from triumph alone. They are forged through trials, refined through faith, and carried forward by the courage to continue when the path disappears from view. And perhaps that was God's greatest gift. Not that He revealed my destiny from the beginning, but that He believed in it long before I did.
When Theodora died in the year 548, the empire mourned. Justinian I never remarried. The man who could have chosen any princess in the known world chose no one after her. Centuries later, the Eastern Church proclaimed Theodora a saint. Historians continue debating her character, her methods, and her ambitions. But few dispute her impact. She began life as the daughter of a bear trainer. She died as one of the most powerful women in human history. Yet perhaps the most remarkable part of her story is not how high she rose. It is how many times she refused to remain what the world expected her to be. The actress, the courtesan, the wanderer, the empress, the saint. Long after emperors, generals, and dynasties faded into memory, the story of Theodora continued inspiring people for a simple reason. She proved that identity is not merely inherited. Sometimes it is created, and sometimes, against every expectation, it changes the world.
Written and created by Anastasia Bitkova.
Thank you for being here. If you're enjoying this journey, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.